coldzera, the star of SK Gaming, won MLG Columbus when the team was called Luminosity. His MVP performance there was so good, he really did finally put his name in that kind of hat to be discussed of, is this the best player in the world? And what he's accomplished since then has only strengthened this position, and he's actually become an even better player, and now it's a very legitimate debate you can have. So in the past, I made a video about this guy, I'll link it up there, which was earlier in the year, when we'd only had a few events. People were already trying to say, like, look how insane this guy's stats are on LAN. Like, oh my God, look, statistically, he's the best player. And at the time, stats were essentially inflated by two key principles. One was that they included a tournament called Max 5, which was only Brazilian teams. And so as a result, the numbers at that tournament were absolutely mind-boggling because he's not playing against top-tier competition. And then also, in the past, in 2015, his numbers were inflated in as much as at the majors, there was a low sample size because his team would always get out of the group stage, basically 2-0ing, and then they'd go to the quarterfinals, and at the quarterfinals, they would be unable to accomplish anything and they'd get knocked out. So as a result, he was having very good numbers, but the differential wasn't as sick because he used to die a lot more back then. He didn't have as many games to prove it against the top-tier competition. And also we had this one Brazilian tournament where he played a lot of maps that was kind of like skewing the numbers upwards a little bit. So at that time, I described in the video, to me, he was clearly a top 10 player. He'd reached that level, but hadn't quite shown us yet that he was a top 5 player. Certainly wasn't the best player in the world. Then you've got to add in that not only did his team have small sample size at majors, but in any of the big tournaments, they were never making the semis or the finals of these tournaments before FNX and Taco joined. He also had a poor IEM Katowice. That was one of his worst big events. And so at this point in time, it's pretty logical where you'd say, no, you can't really call this guy the best player, best team, and best player in the world. Now, that really did turn the corner at MLG Columbus, because not only did his team win the tournament, but they won it in large part thanks to an MVP level performance from him. Absolutely phenomenal stuff. One of the all-time great performances at a major. And ever since then, we have just been inundated, absolutely spoiled with god-tier performances from this guy. He was even strong at DreamHack Malmö right after MLG, where the rest of the team floundered and they went out in the group stage. ESL Pro League Season 3 finals that the team won. I thought he was absolutely unbelievable there. The only reason I had Shox as the MVP is because for the whole tournament, I thought Shox had a slightly better performance. coldzera was right there with him, though, and certainly was incredible in terms of being the best player on the winning team. The only tournament in 2016, really, you can look at, aside from Katowice, and say he had like a below par performance for like the potentially best player in the world, god tier player, is ECS Season 1 finals, where the team finished second. And he was still decent enough. He just didn't have the kind of stellar performance we've now come to expect routinely from this guy. Now, ESL One Cologne to me was the really important tournament, because despite everything else he'd done, this was one of the most insane major performances we have ever seen. Like from start to finish of the major, very, very good. The best player in all the key games, semifinals, final. In the final itself, absolutely untouchable. Even someone like Simple, who'd been doing fantastic against the other great players in the tournament, NiKo, Guardian, Olafmeister, he couldn't stand up to what coldzera was doing under pressure in essentially what are the biggest games of your life, the final of majors. So yeah, now he is absolutely legitimately at that elite tier of players. He is a god in CSGO right now. I mean, at worst, what could you classify him as? Top 3 in the world, depending on who you are. I mean, you've got NiKo, you've got coldzera, you've got Shox. These are the only 3 players that I think reasonably you can even have this discussion about. And different people might choose different ones. But regardless, I mean, of those 3 players, he is having the most success. To a degree, he is the most consistent, actually. You could say Shox has incredible games, and you could say NiKo has maybe a higher ceiling and more skill. But in terms of consistency and consistently good big performances, coldzera wins out in that department. So personally, I mean, I did an article, maybe I'll put it in the description box below. I picked NiKo as the best player right now. I still think he takes that title. coldzera is very close. If NiKo drops off, coldzera will definitely take the title. coldzera might take the title anyway. That's how good this guy is, and that's how good his team is. I think it's absolutely a legitimate debate, and I can certainly see why some intelligent analysts in the scene actually pick him as the best player. I can see their criteria. It's just I have different criteria, or I prioritize different criteria. This is no computational formula to decide this stuff. You must select which criteria you are going to consider less important and which you consider more important. Now then, the skill set of coldzera is what's so interesting, because even this has seen evolution since he was a good player before and a top 10 player, because His AWPing has now gotten even better. As the secondary AWPer of the team, he's now gotten to the point where they routinely run double AWP setup in SK. They even run it on Cobblestone, which I agree with the other analysts. On CT side, I think that's one of the most tricky maps in the game to run double AWP on. Just so happens his team is so good as an overall unit, especially tactically knowing how to play around each other, and now has improved so much on Cobblestone, I can see how they can get away with it. So I think his AWPing's gotten even better. Before, he was more of like a CT side player who would just pick certain spots on certain maps and he would play the AWP from there. And he'd use it just to hold an angle. Now he's become more of an overall evolved AWPer where you see it more on the T side. You see him getting a lot better shots with it. And as a result, I don't think he's ever going to be like a pure hybrid who always has to use the AWP. I don't think he's ever going to be one of the best AWPers like straight up, as in he could just use the AWP like someone like a Simple could. But he's clearly gotten very good in terms of knowing when to use the weapon and therefore be effective with it. His rifle skill actually seems quite similar to what it was before, which is a very consistent style with a bursting style of firing as opposed to just straight up spraying or tapping. I think he uses this very well because it complements the rest of his game, like his positioning and game sense. I mean, if you think of that clip, I think it was against Team Liquid on Train in the final where they all rush out of the alley and he just takes them down one by one by one. I think he has 4 kills in the end. And just the way he does this, the controlled manner and the calm, using the positioning, using technique in terms of the bursting, not trying to panic and go for broke and overextend. I mean, he'd actually, one thing, a quality of coldzera's game is you almost never see him panic spray. I mean, even Olafmeister does that sometimes. Not as in Olafmeister panics, but Olafmeister will do that thing where you get the first kill, then because you see the second guy, you just spray at him and you hope maybe you get him. Now, the problem with that is sometimes you don't, and you just trade 1 for 1. Sometimes you get him, but then you're almost out of bullets because obviously the M4 or the Colt, depending, and Olafmeister obviously uses Silence Colt a lot. These weapons, you can't just spray away and then have like 8 bullets left and expect to get the kill. So having this more controlled style is what allows coldzera to pick up these extra kills, to be greedy in this scenario. It's the equivalent of the basketball and 1 to me, where even other great players sometimes spray away. So as a result, this guy doesn't just trade, he just takes your team down consistently. You have to beat him outright. You're not going to beat him because his guns run out of bullets or he's purposely missing by trying a low percentage shot. His clutch round ability has improved even more so. He's gotten to the point now where he's one of the best clutch round players in the world, and you can see the way he breaks up the clutch round into different 1v1s. He very rarely ever has to fight multiple opponents at once. He moves slowly around the map, doesn't give away any noise. He tries to use his mind to visualize where the opponent is, create a small opening to get 1 kill, then he switches on to the next one. In these 1vx situations, you can really see the game sense this guy has. He has arguably the best game sense in the world. I think that's another area where NiKo's up there with him. This guy's absolutely phenomenal in terms of knowing where to be, when to be, and then what to do from that situation to be able to win the game. Now, part of that isn't just what to do in a general sense. It's knowing what he can do, what his skill set is, and therefore how to position himself to have a chance to win this 1v1, to make a 1v3 into a 1v2. He's a guy where, what I find mentally intimidating about this guy is, if you play against Shocks, what's intimidating is he can just go nuts, run out on terrorist side, cap 2 of you in the head with instant 1-bullet taps, and then you know that like the site's open, they're ripping you apart, and that's very intimidating when you've seen that happen before. It has happened before, and then you know he's coming in the site again. If you're playing against NiKo, what's intimidating is even when he has just a Desert Eagle, you have to be worried this guy will go crazy on you. You have to be worried that if he's still alive, he can still win a round, even though his team's not very good, and his team probably wouldn't win the round if he was dead. The intimidating thing about coldzera is not his skill set. Like, he just has this slow, passive style in general, a little bit more aggressive now, but still passive as a general tendency. He grinds you down, he moves around slowly, he just bursts at you, and as a result, it's more in line with like the Get Right style of old. Although Get Right famously was a sprayer, not a burster, but you're more like, you kill them in the chest, you don't always just go for that crazy headshot. But what makes him intimidating to me is I think he's mentally intimidating because of the very nature of his play. That it is just this slow, grinding style where he just keeps coming. He kills this teammate of yours, then he kills the next one. He never gets too excited, never gets too up and above and everything, never goes for any stupid play and overextends. He just keeps coming, very consistent. And it is like a horror movie. That guy's just coming and you're running away and you go behind the doors and you're looking at him and you're hiding everywhere, and he's just keeping coming and opening the doors and coming through them all. I mean, the analogy I give, and the reason why I called it this title, is, to me, he's the Brazilian Terminator. It's that thing where he's just walking after you and you're trying to run away, you're trying to get away, but you know he's just never going to stop you. The guy's a machine. He's just going to keep walking you down. He's going to keep doing things in a robotic manner, very consistent. He's not going to make a lot of mistakes. That's a key thing as well. Doesn't go for many crazy plays, but as a result, because he doesn't go for almost any mistakes, he gets all the easy kills in the game. He gets all the kills that like don't take as much skill, all the kills that are just using basic technique. But you know what? A lot of star players don't get these. Like, Shox doesn't get all the easy kills in the game. Olofmeister doesn't get all the easy kills in the game. This is a guy where he's just mastered how to be consistent by getting all those 5 to 7 out of 10 difficulty level kills in a game. And as a result, he can always put up numbers, even when he's not having a fantastic game necessarily, in terms of the mad shots or the mad clutch runs to win. So I actually, my description for this guy, because I think in CS, one of the problems we have is people just use the best. So you're the best player, or you're the best AWPer. I think we need more terms to describe and increase our palette for explaining how fantastic some of these world-class players are. Because to me, okay, I told you, I pick NiKo right now as the best player, or the most skilled player. If I want to describe coldzera, I've got a great term for it. He is the most efficient player in the world. He has very strong fragging, among the best fragging in the world in terms of numbers and sheer impact from fragging, but very, very low deaths. And as a result, he's incredibly efficient as a player in his spot in the team and in big matches in terms of big performances. I mean, when he won the MVP award at the last 2 majors, this is a guy who was up there in the high 0.80, 0.89, 0.85 type FPR, frags per round. So he's doing among the best fraggers in the entire world. But at ESL One Cologne, he only averaged 0.52 deaths per round. Now, normally the superstar fraggers who hit 0.8 FPR, 0.9 FPR, a lot of them, Olofmeister type guys, they'll be more in the 0.7 deaths per round because they make a lot of plays, they take a lot of chances, they go for a lot of crazy kills, they get a lot because they're very good, but they also die, they get traded on. coldzera is giving up so few deaths, yet he's giving you as much frags as you need overall. So low deaths, even for a superstar, is incredibly impressive, and that's why he has a huge game impact. This almost reminds me of the terminology when we talk about basketball or hockey. A lot of us who consider ourselves aficionados or experts, we revere the two-way player, the player who's not only offensively fantastic, but defensively is very good. Now, sure, in Counter-Strike, we have offense and defense, T-side and CT-side, but in this particular sense, I think this is the best manifestation of that concept in the game, because he's not just giving you the mad kills, he's also giving up so few deaths that the opponents, he's like a one-man walking differential that you're going to get a massive net gain from having coldzera, and you're going to lose basically nothing. The opponent's going to lose a lot, and they're going to gain very little. So he is a one-man MVP performance in that particular sense. And it's no wonder now that his team's fantastic around him that he's got the vehicle to be able to dominate and to be able to win majors and to be able to look like one of the best players in the entire world beyond what he used to look at when he's a very good player and a very consistent player earlier in the year and late last year. So it's his consistency ultimately that is his best and his most shining quality. And I look forward to the day where I can just say this guy's the best player in the world, or if he can keep doing what he's doing now, he'll be on par to do it. He'll be on track to do so. But for me, he took over, he got into that discussion in March, end of March, early April, at MLG Columbus. It's been a couple of months. I want to see more of this. And if we see more, it feels like it's his destiny to become the best player in the world one day.